So we're at the end of the conference, amazingly. It's gone really fast. There have been lots of very interesting sessions, all kind of topics. My name's Rachel Davies. And Sandra's occasionally hinted that I'm going to cover XP things in this talk, but I'm not necessarily going to cover much XP things. So you can always ask questions at the end, and I will talk a little bit about XP, but it's not the main part. So one of the things that I've learned, and I have been to a lot of conferences, is in a way, there's not much point going to the conference if you don't make a change when you get back, if you don't take the learnings that you have gathered here and apply them. So I know that many of you have written notes. I see you making notes. I see you taking photographs of quotes or books. This talk is about taking those little seeds and helping them to grow and actually going the next step on your journey as software craftsmen. So I've been around in the industry for a long time, and I wanted to try and represent this. So for about the first 11 years of my career, I was doing C and C++ and Ada and working in waterfall organizations where I really didn't deliver any software. Often it was really cancelled, you know, especially when I was working on large telecoms projects. So when I heard about XP, I was excited because I thought, this is radically different. And it might just work. We might be able to deliver software. So actually, it's only really in the second half of my career I delivered any software. And so I worked in an XP company using Java. Then I kind of got inspired by all of the agile kind of boom that came along. And I thought, well, you know, I can try and help more teams to get this way of working. And so for 9 years, I went and I tried to help people talk to each other and figure out what they should do and let's make a list of what we're going to do. Let's put the most important thing first. Let's do that. And I wrote a book. And then I kind of moved back to XP, and I was coaching a team that was founded by one of the junior developers in the first XP team I was in. So it's a very successful XP company. It's been acquired. And I was coaching there for 4 years, and I realized that I was tired of coaching people, and I actually wanted to do some software development. And so I took one step away from being a coach, and then I was a team lead where I was doing a bit of development. And now I'm not doing any team leading at all, and I'm working in a very small team where I get to write code all the time, which is good. And I just wanted to kind of point out something, which is I always feel a bit at the edge of software craftsmanship. It's not because I don't think that it's valuable, but somehow I feel it's a wave of good stuff that has happened a bit after I was already interested in things. So I feel a little bit like I'm an imposter being here because I don't feel like a strong part of the software craftsmanship movement, but at the same time, I've been to Socrates, I've been to LSCC meetups, and I believe that it's a worthwhile endeavor and that what you're doing is making a difference in the industry. But I just feel like I'm somehow at the edge, and that's partly because after such a long gap of not writing any code, I'm actually pretty poor at writing code. You know, I can write code, but I'm not a master at any of the programming languages that I know, I would say. And this picture is nothing to do with the software craftsmanship. It's actually, I dropped my car off at the garage this morning and I was confronted by this large sign, and I just thought, oh, I shall take a photograph and share it. But I feel like I'm really still at the beginning of learning how to be a good developer. Now, one thing, when you go back to talk to your teams, it's really important to remember this, and I think you probably all know this. When we're developers, we're always learning, and we get continually, and the great thing about software development is it's a continuous stream of problems to solve. So we really enjoy our jobs. And remember this, when you are trying to interest other people in taking on new ideas, really most people enjoy learning, and in fact they can't stop themselves from learning. They want to learn, It's just you help to give them the focus to learn about something that is useful or interesting. And I'll come back to that. So who here, wait a minute, who here feels that they did learn something useful? Yeah? Cool. Okay. And now I'm going to do the weird thing of making you talk to each other. So I'd like you to actually talk to the person next to you for a few moments and explain to that person what you actually learned that you would like to try out when you get back to work. So take a few moments. I'm not going to say anything. Oh, no, you Okay. Shall I continue? Yes? So that was really nice. I hear a good buzz in the room. There's plenty of people talking to each other about the stuff that they want to try. You have to remember that you are the energized people who came to a conference. You're also the lucky people who got to come to the conference. When you go back to work, this is unlikely to be the reception. People are not going to be going, yes, new ideas, we're going to do them right away. It may be somewhat different. So I just want to mention this now because sometimes people, they're so excited when they're at the conference and they talk to all these people with brilliant ideas and they're like, yes, yes, yes. And then it's really hard to be faced by all the negative feelings which tend to happen when you talk to people who've just been at work. It was just another day. You know, there was Thursday and there was Friday and then there was the weekend and then now you're back from the conference and, you know, we're not talking to you or we're not that interested. So try to understand that you are likely to have some very valid concerns from people that you talk to about your ideas. So, classic one. People are worried about whether they can do the thing that you're talking about. They're also worried that whether you can. They may be worried about permission from management. They may be worried about the consequences. You know, if we do this, maybe it'll slow down or maybe it'll make us, you know, catch us out in some way. And then you usually get a few people who are just thinking, that sounds like hard work. You know, I'm not that bothered. Now, what I've learned about change through coaching people for a long time is change happens one person at a time and very slowly. It's not like there's no magic switch, you press the switch and everybody's excited. And, wait a minute, actually, the other thing is you're not usually ready for this kind of reception. You probably don't know enough. So go carefully, slow down. You're not ready for this big reaction. You don't know enough about the thing. You know, if you saw a session about Kotlin and you've never tried Kotlin before, it's not the time to introduce it to your team. You have to try it out first and probably in a safe place and learn about it before you try. So, big tip for introducing any change into any organization or any new idea is don't force it. Don't push it too hard. You have to actually maintain a slow energy about it. It's not like, and I meet so many people who will say, well, I said we should do this, and nobody listened. And it's because you said it once, and you didn't carry on saying it, and you gave up too quickly. So the thing about going slowly is not just going slowly, but keeping going. So it's not just go back, say your idea once, and then nobody took it up and it's their fault. It's really your responsibility to invest more time in it and to really take care about how you introduce it and keep going. So, and the really important thing about change is to look at it from somebody else's point of view. What benefit is it to me? What are the reasons that that person might face for not doing that thing right now? And try to help figure out how to overcome those kinds of issues. You probably have a bunch of questions. Oops, sorry. And what I would suggest you do is actually you can list your questions out and you can make a plan about how you're going to figure out the answers. And normally, with any new technique, probably it will take a little while of self-study, maybe connecting with meetups or other people, maybe online or maybe in person. But it's not going to be, I'm just magically going to get the answers with no hard work. You will need to find out how to practice, and these questions that you have are often questions other people will have. So think about what are the questions other people will have about trying this, and try to figure out how you will answer them. So you have to invest some time in your own learning, but you will later on have to invest time in helping other people learn. So it's also really important to share what you've learned and make it about those other people. So make it welcome people into your learning process. Make it open. Don't try to kind of close it off and I've got this secret idea and I'm working on this secret plan. But at the same time, don't say, right, I already have all the answers. So it's kind of some middle way of you're trying to invest in it yourself, but you are being open with other people about how this new thing might work. And actually, I've put these pictures of fruit and biscuits. It's often a good chance if you're at the break time or going for coffee to start planting the seeds about your idea and talk about what you're interested in, what you're working on, what you're learning about. And people start to get to know this gradually rather than oh my God, so-and-so wants to do this thing. It's more like, oh, they are studying it, sounds interesting. They may get time then to look at it at their own pace, and then they may feel a little bit more comfortable to discuss it with you. So try to introduce and discuss things in a slow way, in a nice environment where people feel relaxed. Remember, like I said at the beginning, people enjoy learning. They want to learn. And it's a big motivation factor in our work. Most people are in software development because they like learning and they want the opportunity to learn, but they may be in an environment where there's pressure to do a whole bunch of other things, and so we need to kind of go at the right pace. Conditions for learning, and I think this is the thing. It's just trying to create a space where, wait a minute, yeah, sometimes these slides are a bit strangely ordered. So what's an important thing to do is to try and think, when can we get time to learn these things together without it being a time when everybody's too busy? And actually, if you are on a manic project where there's a big lot of deadlines, it's probably not the right time to introduce new things at that stage. People are really closed when there's a lot of work. And think about opportunities where people can step back from the work and actually try things out. I'm going to talk in a few moments about the kinds of things that you can do. But one thing is also to think about investing enough in whatever the thing is that you want to introduce to make it possible for people to learn about it more easily. So for example, you can gather a bunch of resources and make them available. You can write blog posts, you can make links to videos, you can buy books, you can do these kinds of things. This makes it a little bit more accessible. So think about how you can make the thing that you want to introduce more accessible to the people that you're working with. And maybe you don't want to make it too easy, but otherwise people are thinking, I don't want to learn that, that's too easy. But think about what makes it enjoyable for them. So, and the other thing is, one thing that may make people resist is if they feel it's all about you and it's your big initiative. You have to be very humble when you're introducing change. It's about us and how we are doing something. Try to find other people to lead things. Don't feel that you should try and lead everything yourself. If you try and lead everything yourself, people will think you're trying to get all the credit. And that actually is one of the things that acts against trust, is feeling like it's all a self-oriented thing that you're doing for your own ends. So try to make it something where other people can lead, other people can shine because they have learnt this thing.
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? The public address and fire alarm systems are about to be tested.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's just relax.
Evacuation signal. Please take no further action.
It's green. Time to refactor.
Test is now complete.
Hooray! It works, we're safe. Oh, thank you for your cooperation. Okay, all right. And then sometimes you will get people who are very skeptical. So somebody who's not sure your idea is very good. They are usually a great source of identifying the problems with your idea. So do talk to them. Also, I have found often the people who complain about an idea the most can actually be the champion of it later on. There are so many people that I know that when I was perhaps introducing Agile to their team, they were like the person who really thought it was a crap idea and not to do it. And then I might meet them a year later and they're saying, oh yeah, I've joined this other company and now we're doing Agile. And you're like, I thought you didn't even like this stuff. So sometimes the skeptics care about an idea, but they're just not sure yet. And so the reason they're being negative is because they're really testing out your idea. So you should pay attention. They're helping you, even though it can be a bit of an energy suck trying to kind of talk to people who don't want to do things because there is a continuous long reason of not doing things. So I'm now going to talk about some things that are the teams that I was working with at Unruly. Unruly is a company that uses XP, and these are some learning things that we did in our culture. And when I joined that organisation, there's only a few of the things that people were actually doing, and I helped them to introduce a lot of these different learning kind of approaches. So I'm going to talk about them and the kinds of things that we tried. So the thing that they were already doing when I joined was pair programming. So they were doing pair programming on all their production code. But it is a really great technique to use when you're learning. And it is, even if you're working in an organisation where pair programming is not mandated on all production code, it's possible to say, would you like to join me? I can show you how to do this. And have short periods of pairing. It's a great way to show people different approaches of how to do things. So I'm imagining, from a software craftsmanship point of view, that most of you have tried pair programming. Can I get a show of hands? Who's tried pair programming? Okay. What about mob programming? See, quite a lot of people. And actually, it's a funny thing. So you'll get managers saying, oh yeah, pair programming is inefficient. but actually you get a lot more done and you have better quality and more people understand how things work, and you don't have to, one of the big things of like having some work and then waiting for a code review is that's a longer period of time before you can actually release a feature. So if you do pair programming or if you do mob programming, you're able to actually put things live without the code review step. So mob programming is where you have several people, sometimes a whole team, sometimes 3 people, all working on the same problem. Now, this is not an ideal mob programming setup. I'm not. When we first started doing mob programming, we tried various different setups of, you know, screens, and you wouldn't really want to do it with 2 laptops and another screen. That's just not really a very good idea. What we did do much more, if you can see in the background, there's like a more large TV. We got large TVs on big desks where people could get a bunch of chairs around, and then we would tend to do a cycle around and have plenty of breaks. And we found that that approach was really good for sharing and contributing, and we used it to introduce, for example, we were moving towards, I think we started using mob programming just when we were moving to Java 8, and it really helped all the people who were not really that good at functional programming to grasp those ideas. I'm assuming as from a software craftsmanship community that you are aware of coding dojos. I think Paul talked about the Coding Dojo handbook yesterday, and the thing is that if you're trying to introduce new techniques, it can be a good way for people to learn things in a safe environment. We tended to, in our place, do coding dojos in different languages than the ones we were actually using. So one of the things that helped us move towards a functional programming mindset, for example, was that we ran a Haskell dojo for quite some weeks. And what we did was we made that dojo actually in work time rather than at lunchtime, because there is always, I find in many workplaces, you get people who say, oh, I don't want to do the dojo because it's in lunchtime and I need to go to the bank and buy sandwiches and all of the things people do at lunchtime. So you may need to get some management buy-in if you're going to make it at a work period of time, but then you're probably going to have more people come along, and it's part of establishing this idea that the management team supports a learning culture, and the learning culture then supports retention of developers and helps your team to grow and adapt to new ideas. And what we used to do, rather than there be one person who was responsible for organising all the coding dojos, is we would, people would make a pitch. They would run a coding dojo, but they'd only get like 3 slots, and then somebody else would be doing one. So they had the responsibility for, teaching people about React or Go or Rust. We had lots of different programming languages that people tried, and it was a good way for people to feel like they could have a little play with another language and some other programming concepts in a safe environment, and it didn't have to be organised just by one person. We also had lightning talks. Some of these things I'm not going to talk in great depth. Again, with the lightning talks, we made sure it was a different person who organised them each time. They were every 2 weeks. Again, they were also in work time so that people didn't feel like it was eating into their spare time. And we were very lucky in that we had 20% learning time. So one of the things, though, was when I joined the company, people were doing learning time, but they weren't talking about what they'd been learning. So the thing that I added, and you could add this kind of thing even if you don't have 20%, is that we had a session at the end of every week where everybody would get together and share what they'd been learning. And we would pass around, obviously you don't have to use a Viking hat. So like this guy's wearing a Viking hat, right? And the idea is it's like a talking token. You put it on and you say, this week I learned about this, or this is what I tried. And you could show it and demonstrate it on the screen if you wanted to. But it's a great leveler to make sure that everybody is actually taking that time to learn, and they think it is important, it is part of that culture to share that learning. So establishing rituals where people actually share the learning they're doing encourages people to feel like it's a normal part of work. A simple thing that you can do, if people are saying, oh, we don't have time for learning, is you can actually do things about swapping teams. It's one of the easiest ways to get a source of learning within your organisation. So we had 4 development teams all working in a shared work area, and we had, every 3 months, we would put a survey out, like a Google form, saying who would like to switch teams. And usually, 1 or 2 people wanted to swap teams. So it wasn't like everybody swapping teams all the time. It was like every 3 months, maybe one person would move to another team. And eventually you had people who'd worked in all of the teams. And this was a great way for people to say, oh, in that team they have a library to do this, or in this other team they take this approach to testing or pairing. And so we didn't have these guys in the white suits. This is just, we were sharing the office space with an advertising agency, and so they were just passing through, and some people posed for photographs with them. But it does give you this exposure in a safe way to go and try working with some other people, see what it's like, and you can share your learning and they can learn from you. And what was the kind of magical thing was, even the people who didn't want to change team got exposed to the new people, so everybody got exposed. So with people moving around, you eventually get good mixes where people have worked with all the other people in the teams. The other thing that we did was we tried doing development exchanges. This in the XP panel earlier on, Steve Freeman was talking about this idea that you could swap with other companies. So this is, I don't know, some people may recognize who this person is. This is Tom Westmacott from Tim Group, but I think he's changed jobs now. And he came to work with our team. And the way we organize these developer exchanges is we realized we had to put some official paperwork in place. So initially, we just got the CTO of each company to speak to the other CTO. We had a meeting, and we signed a non-disclosure agreement. And we had a couple of conditions, which was we have to change with a company that's doing some sort of XP practices so that there's pair programming, because it makes it more worthwhile to be able to pair with the other team, and we will learn from them. And then the other thing is we tried to do it with companies that were not in the same business as we were. So like we were working in advertising, so we didn't really want to be swapping with our competitors. That might have been difficult. So we swapped with people like, companies like Tim Group, Redgate, and Mendeley, and a few other companies. I can't remember all of the companies, but what we did, the structure was come and work in our company for a week, then one of our team will go and work in your company for a week, and at the end of each of those weeks, that person feeds back to the company that they've swapped into the observations. And this is what Steve Freeman was saying earlier. It's actually like holding a mirror up. You know, it's like, why are you doing this? This is crazy, which Tom, for example, was saying, talked about our very painful continuous integration issues, which they didn't have, but they had different issues. So, I would encourage you to try this, and it doesn't really cost anything. It doesn't really need a massive amount of support or organisation. Okay, so now I'm getting towards the end of my talk, if you're wondering how long this is going to go on for. So I came in as an agile coach, working across a bunch of teams, and I didn't really want to be the person who organised everything and made everything happen, because I knew that doesn't really work, especially when you leave. So I was trying to think about from the very start, what techniques can we use to ensure that people keep going with this and that it doesn't feel all the responsibility of one person. So it's important when things don't happen to actually react and say, why has this not happened, and be disappointed. And, you know, if everybody really, really enjoyed going to a coding dojo and then the next week it didn't happen because somebody booked the room or something like that, actually talk to people and say, well, why didn't it happen? Can we make it happen? Really try to kind of get to the bottom of What's stopping this happening? I thought you liked this. The next thing is, and this is something I personally don't really want to be responsible for making things happen. So to try and establish from the very beginning that this is a rota, that people take turns, some sort of system where people know how they can propose things and that they don't have to do them forever if they do them. So just try to kind of establish this turn taking. Also, something that we did, and I think the team still do, is the developers in the team track the learning. So they are aware of whether they are using their learning time, what's going on. Some sort of system that is not like a project manager coming along and saying, filling a timesheet or something like this. So this probably doesn't look like much to you, but these symbols in the rows, they represent different kinds of activity. So you can see, probably you can see that there's something that looks like a pile of people. That's mob programming. So this is how we were representing. We're trying mob programming and seeing whether we were, how often we were doing it. The star shapes are when people were taking a 20% learning day. And the circle with the 2 dots is pairing. And the hammer, it's like we're actually working on green, what we would call green cards, which is like technical debt, basically. So, and then the sunshine is when people are on holiday. There are probably some other symbols in there. I think the one line is probably people being on support duty. But having a simple system where people can actually share what their activity is, we updated it every day on the stand-up. And then when we had a retrospective, we printed it out. And then we looked at it, and it's one of the things that we paid attention to, and it's part of our reflection. So if you can actually find a way of tracking something in a not too painful way, and then a way where you can actually see whether you're really doing what you plan to do. So, and then last of all, and I think Paul also said this about the academy at Navoda, I think you need to have some sort of ceremony or some way of celebrating or some kind of token that's exchanged. If you are in a culture of a group of people who value learning, then it's nice to exchange something and to have people applaud that. So we had like, when new starters joined our team, they would, that each batch of new starters would be responsible for running the Tech Academy for the next batch of new starters. So they would go through a learning process, but they would be aware that they would have to run it for the next people. And at the end of that period of time where that people had presented to each other about our systems, which actually people find that they learn a lot. When you have to present to somebody else, you learn a lot. And so we encourage everybody to present about the different systems. And then they would do a rotation where everybody would try working in each of the teams for a week. Sometimes people wanted to stay for 2 weeks, and that was fine. And then there would be like a celebration where people would get a special certificate with like a cat's paw and a Star Trek thingy and some crazy writing in a nice frame. So like in a glass frame, so it's something that you can keep, and if you leave the company, you take with you. So and even in the background, there is I don't know, can you see there's like a sort of a pole with lots of stickers on? So every time somebody went to a conference, they had a responsibility to put a sticker to kind of indicate that we went to this one or we went to this one. And so again, it's a way of trying to embed learning and encourage this behavior that we go out, we find ideas, and we bring them back to our team. And that's an important thing for us. So what I'm trying to say really is that when you try to introduce learning, also think about ways to keep it alive, to keep this idea that we care about learning and we share learning, and that's what brings us together. So I think that's nearly everything. So now what? It's sunset in London nearly. We've been down in this basement, even though the sunshine has been there. So I would like you to have a think about how you can bring back the learning that you've had here. One thing, and a thing that you can do all of you should be able to do is spend some of your own time learning more about something that you wrote down, or you thought, yes, that sounds more interesting. Then start to be aware of opportunities when you can help other people learn that same thing. Once you feel like you know enough to actually share with somebody else, and then even try to formalize what you learn by writing a blog post or by giving a talk. Some companies I know, they will have a responsibility. If you go to an event, then you should always prepare a talk about what you've learned. And so this is actually a really good thing to offer, even if the company that you work in doesn't do that now. Having this idea that I went to the conference and so I'm now going to give a talk. We had this practice, and it's one of the ones I didn't really mention, but because sometimes people would find it hard work making a presentation, we said, well, you can even just make it about the food that was at the conference. So sometimes people would have, I went to this conference, I went to Java 1, and this is the ice cream we had, and then it would sort of be a nice breaker into, oh, and then we went to this talk by this guy who wrote the book, or then we went to a workshop where we practiced this. Just sharing not just the theoretical, intellectual side of things, but also sharing the social aspect of it, because then that makes it more likely for people who have not been to such an event to feel like it might be interesting or fun to go to such a thing. So that if you have this idea that I enjoyed going to Software Craftsmanship London this year, try to encourage somebody to come next year by making it not just sound like it was a load of slides, but the social aspects and all the conversations that you have with the people who are in the audience, not just the speakers. So think about that. And I've got a bit of paper here. Joe forgot to say, Joe is my hero because he revived the XP group that was almost dying. Extreme Tuesday Club, which has been going since 1999, and used to organise conferences like this called XP Day, kind of dwindled to such an extent that you might go and there would be one other person there. But now it's alive, busy, full, and next week we have Mike Hill, Paul Hill coming, and he's going to go to the Extreme Tuesday Club, and also there's an XP London group on Thursday as well. So there are two opportunities, if you happen to be in London, of hearing more XP things. Okay, all right. And I think this last one, it's a bit philosophical, but basically, you want change? Be that change. Try to make a change, make a difference. And that helps the lives of other people be better and spreads the knowledge and learning that gives everybody joy about programming. So be the change that you wish to see in the world. Okay, and with that, thank you, and that's the end. So I guess we have time for questions just because there aren't any more talks after me. So. But you may also be thinking, oh, I would like to go home. Any questions? It's okay if there's no questions. We can then go home. I'm sure there must be a bunch of thank yous we need to do.
There's a whole bunch of thank
yous. Yeah. So shall I hand over to you to do the thank yous? Yes. Okay. Right.
Okay. So I won't keep you too long. So first of all, a massive thanks to every single one of you really for being here over the last 2 days. When we kind of came up with the idea to run this conference, we had no idea how it was going to go, and no idea how many people would turn up. So to have a full room has been amazing. I had a lot of conversations last night during the breaks at lunch, etc. I know certainly from our side, organising it, we've had a great time, so hopefully you've enjoyed it as well. Massive thank you to every single one of our speakers. Fantastic. Been really massive round of applause. Also, a big shout out to ASOS for providing the tab last night, which is awesome. And in the background as well, a massive thanks to Skills Matter. Hopefully, many of you have been to Code Mode before, but I think this place has been a really fantastic home for our first conference. And I know a lot of staff in the background have been working really hard to try and make it happen. So a round of applause for Code Mode and the Skills Matter team. And also a big thanks to another person at the back, Wanna, who's also been working very long hours helping to get everything going together as well, so very much appreciated. Promise I wouldn't call her out. And that's it. I know you're all dying to go home. It's been a very busy 2 days, so fantastic. Keep an eye out on our Twitter handle for announcements about videos. We'll be sending some what we call a digital retrospective. It's a survey form. We'll be sending that out early next week as well. But have a great weekend. Thanks for coming, and hopefully see you again soon. Cheers.